All right, David, we're live. You're good to go.
All right, thanks for joining us today. I'm David Couch with the Kentucky Department of Education. This is our monthly get-together with all of our CIOs and EdTech leaders across the state. Thanks for getting with us this morning. And it sounds like we have someone that probably needs to mute in the background. So I know we have some muters there. They're stationed with that. So please take a look at that or do that yourself. So thanks for once again joining us this morning. You saw the agenda that is sent out. I didn't get anything from you all about topics that you would like us to discuss today beyond the ones that I identified. But obviously through Go Soapbox, which we now have live, you can go ahead and post anything that you would like us to make sure that we discuss, so that we wouldn't have a chance to prepare for that. But feel free to leave any kind of comments there. And obviously, if you've not used Go Soapbox before, they bubble to the top. And along with, we have a summary of last month's webcast and what I sent you this morning. We discussed the budget some there, so I try not to recover the same types of things, and it may point you to that if we see certain things that are already in that summary note. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And we have time at the very end for our OET staff and the districts for any other topics that we want to hit within our time frame. Let's go to. We'll start with the very first topic that we had on there. It's talking about our digital readiness. For this school year. I know we take a snapshot of what it is as of 30 June, which in normal years that's good enough to take a once a year snapshot. However, there are certain data elements that will be important for us throughout this school year. I think most of you are seeing what we're seeing in Kentucky and other states are seeing is increase the COVID-19 cases. I just saw this morning the report in Wisconsin, where I think 80% of their hospital beds are full, and obviously what everyone's trying to do is make sure that the hospitals don't get overwhelmed, where they have to make choices: who gets a bed, who doesn't get a bed, and who gets a ventilator and who doesn't. And so far we're below that in Kentucky, but we're seeing other states that are running into that. And obviously, as you head toward this the normal flu and cold season, people can't tell who has what. So I think we need to be prepared for both in person, which we're doing, but also virtual, which districts are doing, but also 100% virtual for certain schools or certain districts as we go through this throughout this school year. So there's going to be certain data elements that's going to be important. We call the heartbeat. That it's going to be important for you as the district leader, EdTech leader, to have that. But also I get questions and I'm asked to speak to that constantly by all different kinds of angles about where we at as a state, where we at with certain districts. And so that's why we will call the heartbeat. So certain parts of the things we share with you will be more real time. Definitely the internet access beyond the school campus is something that folks are interested in. And also their access to devices. And so the numbers that we share with you, we'll talk about which ones are snapshots in time of 30 June. And when I have to talk to it about what's the probability of that number increasing. For example, I know one of the poll questions today is, and you'll hear our field staff talk about, okay, the stuff that you didn't show on your 30 June inventory, how many things have come in since then, especially the mobile devices for the students, and how many do you still expect? Because it addresses that, whether they're in person or they're virtual, the ability to do those. And that's going to be of great interest to a large variety of folks that are out there. But I appreciate everyone's feedback from that. We got a feedback from 171 districts. It is unique in the United States, us being able to show this, but the tool is meant just not for the agency. It's also meant for you all to have a snapshot and get leverage within your own district of the importance of collecting. I know in Katie, the agency, I use the levers of the law to help me get certain things from other offices, which I normally would probably have difficulty in doing. This could give you the leverage to see what your snapshot of your district is, but also to see, and it's a nice tool to allow you to see how you can compare how your district compares to others around you and others around the state. And once again, using his leverage to address needs or to keep going with the good stuff that you have going. So Marty, let's bring up, and we'll just talk through some of the highlights of the digital readiness that we have for this 2020-2021 school year.
Absolutely, David. So you should see our screen right now,
See it?
we just wanted to call out a few points here. Obviously, everyone did an awesome job this year and pushing forward. Our digital readiness is split into two pieces, and really there's the inventory types of questions and data that's collected that all of our district leaders submit, and then there's the programmatic questions that are really just broader overview kind of district strategy kind of positioning. And so we just wanted to call out just a few as of today. Our public report, David, I know we've talked, our public report will be live really, really soon. Don't have an exact date, but it is it will be prepared much faster than years past, and for all the right reasons, as you mentioned, David. There's legislative conversations, there's funding conversations, and this is a collective effort across the state so that we're all helping each other move our strategies forward. This first one to call out is obviously student-to-computer ratio. This is something that we've tracked for quite some time. It's a part of our master plan work, which also is reflected in our district level EdTech plans. So we're down to 0.78.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So, and I, have to educate folks on it, is, our goal, if we started back in the early 90s was, 6-to-1 ratio. And then we moved that with our current master plan to 1-to-1. And now you can see we're better than 1-to-1. And people say, well, why are you better than 1-to-1? And so I think what we have seen during this pandemic is, while we had 1-to-1, that wasn't 1-to-1 mobile, is the way I describe it.
It wasn't individually assigned, right?
Yeah, an individual assigned 1-to-1 mobile. So what we're seeing, while it's not nothing's 100% of 100% perfect, but what we're seeing is a move toward given that there's going to be such an emphasis on virtual this year, and depending how long it takes everyone, whenever the vaccine gets out and takes everyone to get that, which, it could take up a year just to do that. Being virtual is going to be part of the toolbox for one year, maybe 2 years. So people are going to be very interested in the ability to do that. And so what we're seeing districts doing is moving toward a mobile 1-to-1 versus just a stationary, because the desktop computers that you have in a lab, in a library, and in a classroom are not very helpful during these times where a student can't take that back and forth or take it home at all. So they're just sitting there in the school buildings. So definitely we're seeing a movement toward the 1-to-1. And Marty, what I saw from the data is, and I always remind folks, we had close to 800,000 computers last year, which I would always tell folks that's 8 times larger than all of state government and local government combined. Now we've moved to 900,000. 100,000 jump. Yep, and that was a snapshot as of 30 June, which is important for us to try to capture what has happened since 30 June to address this. That's, the data that we collect shows about 97% of the homes or the beyond the school campus, the student has access to internet, and 96% have access to a device beyond the school campus. And so folks are going to be very interested in the devices going back there. Nothing's going to be 100% perfect. So that's why you're seeing us ask the question that we need to try to get a feel for today and then ongoing. How many more devices do we expect to be on top of this? Is it 20,000? Is it 50,000? Is it 60,000 more? Obviously, we get towards 60,000 more. We're getting really close to a 1-to-1 mobile that we're seeing that are out there. What I take a look at here is just obviously the increase of the Chromebooks has gone up, and what else? What other comments do we have to say?
Well, I think that it's important both this last understanding point, a 0.78 to 1 student to computer ratio. Again, that's just a ratio. It's just a number. It doesn't represent implementations of anything yet. But then, so when we look at statewide strategy, really helping develop conversations locally with superintendents and boards to say, hey, statewide, we're at a 0.78 to 1, but maybe locally, we still are a 1.3 to 1. And so let's drive that conversation a little bit deeper. Also understanding the footprint, the digital footprint across the state. Again, 64% of our footprint is now Chromebook. And so when we think about refresh and the cost per device then that becomes a much different conversation. And so it's important to understand that if we look at overall 20, maybe 5% of our 26% maybe of our digital footprint are, Windows and Mac enterprise type devices as well. And so again, driving local conversations is important, leveraging some of this data.
I think the other part too, because this will be relative to a conversation we're talking about a little bit later on down the line that Mike Lettingham will leave about the new contract for instructional devices for enterprise systems. But on the Mac, you see there the Mac OS is 3%. We think we take a look at what districts have actually purchased with their district funds, that's close to 1%. Because if you would take out the data seam computers, I think over the term of data seam, there's been 23,000 Mac OS desktops that were given out. And through the course of time, some of those were taken offline. So I don't know if 12,000 of those are still active within your school buildings or more than that. Maybe we thought it was down to maybe 8,000 that were non-data seam desktops that were out there. So the part we're also taking a look at those Mac OS systems, how many of those are Mac Airs? Are half of those, that 8,000 that would remain that districts have purchased Mac Airs. So if you really take a look at, that's the inventory, but what districts are purchasing, we think that number is 1% that are out there that are Mac OS, either Mac OS, the desktop, or the Mac OS MacBook Pro or Air that is out there. So we'll talk about that, because when we had the results of the contract that was just awarded, we were trying to understand the impacts that are out there and how to mitigate through the impacts of Apple not being one of our CETS product standards any longer. But you see that go ahead, Marty.
Well, I was just going to make one final point about this. Sorry to jump in, but this is a major reason. Number one, representing all the hard work that's been going on throughout the state for not just response to COVID-19, obviously well before that, but this is part of the major reason why Kentucky, we were able in our public schools to pivot as quickly as we could during a pandemic, is because we've been doing this work for quite some time. We understand the value, and in fact, when we think about access, having a device for every student is a major storyline for us. And I know as you said, David, we're not fully there 100%, but we are getting so close, and that is the first step to access. And then we get into, internet access away from campus, and that's the second most important part of that access equation, because without a device, we can't leverage internet, right? So
I would say the other thing that helps us at the state level is when we found out, if you go back, Marty, to the previous one, when we found out that Apple was no longer going to be one of our CETS product standards for enterprise desktops or enterprise laptops, my staff knows I quickly asked, well, who's going to be most impacted by that? So we were able to take a look at the districts that had, as I mentioned to you, that had actually purchased from the contract, not the data seam, but actually purchased from it. And there was 8 districts, 8 of them, that had purchased more than that had more than 1 or 2% of their devices were Mac OS systems. So before that announcement came out, our field staff was able to talk with those 8 districts and just give them a heads up and just talk to them, what does that mean or not mean going forward? But that's the value of having it just collectively and also individually by districts. Because we got the a good feel for, as you all do, is what's going on in every district across the state.
Oh, that works so much more seamlessly. I love it.
Whoa, someone else needs to be.
Someone mute.
Someone's. We need our muters to mute someone there. Okay, so Marty, you can go ahead.
Yeah. And you pointed this out, David, but the next thing that we're looking at in a major way, and we've been tracking this mobile next-gen type of device. We've referred to it in the past. Understanding mobility is where we need to be long-term. Chained to a physical classroom or a physical spot is not ideal for, is not the best scenario for learning, right? And so it's good, and it's the right thing in some occasions in labs that we need to have. But by and large, the more mobile we get, the better we get. And so we now have over 695,000 mobile devices. Now we're leveraging some big ideas from purchasing patterns there as well. And so, for example, we don't know exactly how many Windows devices are stationary or mobile. We don't know exactly, but we can take some stab at it based on spending patterns of laptops versus desktops. And so 193,600 devices were purchased this past school year. 193,000. And so that's a pretty big deal for us. And it also makes sense for us. And we've watched this and tracked this over the last 10 years. And our surplus amount, which helps us know, and this is key. And this is something from a leadership perspective that we're all pushing on our district EdTech leaders as well as us, that we can't just keep old equipment and expect it to last forever. We got to understand the total cost of ownership with older devices that we have to work on more. And so when this surplus number stays consistent, that helps us understand that our refresh cycles are staying good and staying solid. And so we've watched that and tracked that across the board. And if you're a district that has trouble at a leadership level surplusing older equipment, then we think we can help in that conversation with this statewide snapshot as well. David, next we're looking at online assessment devices. I don't know if you want to talk about.
Well, that's just important for us. We're all unsure of how assessment, especially for the K-Prep testing, will work. For the rest of this school year. Right now, it's a go. It says folks are go. Now, what form will that take? Will it be more formative testing or interim testing, or really will it be a statewide K-Prep like test? But regardless of whether it's a statewide K-Prep or whether it's a more formative or interim, is we do have a much higher percentage. I mean, that's a pretty large leap from what it was, the 19% leap of devices that are capable of doing online testing, and that's still being worked on. Rhonda Sims, who leads that effort within the Department of Education, Associate Commissioner of that Office of Assessment Accountability. So far the feedback is, the testing will go forth with it, but I don't know what form that will be. No one really knows at this time. But the good news is we're prepared, and this was one of the success stories that we had last year. Unfortunately, right before the announcement of such the large, this was our largest, the largest scale online testing success we've ever had. And in comparison to other states, and a press announcement was getting ready to go out the next week, and that next week was that March 10th through the 15th week, where COVID-19 really shut down our state and most of our nation. So it didn't really get the publicity it needed. But the good news is it's capable of doing that in a variety of forms.
David, just to push one more time, and this storyline here is a big one for Kentucky. Again, much different than other states, but to understand, and we have districts right now moving forward with common assessments, interim, interval, or predictive analysis stuff. So NWEA, I know my students are participating remotely in some of those assessments, and this is a part of the storyline for us as well. So that's great news as we move forward. It also is a nod to our assessment vendors, who are continuing to modernize our assessment systems to be able to, and that's something we've pushed on with our assessment partners for years, and they're very responsive right now, which is awesome. David, next we're looking at Wi-Fi inside of schools. This is a big deal for us. We're up another 2% for schools who have what we refer to, who have implemented what we refer to as dense Wi-Fi. But also we have a bit of a shift so that those connector, those WAN links between schools back to our internet handoff at a district level have shifted just a bit. And so we have faster connections and faster speeds in between schools than we had last year. And then the last thing we just wanted to touch on is the people side work. This continues to be a great storyline for us, David. I'm only showing full-time folks on this, but from a statewide reporting perspective, when we also look at our part-time folks who are playing a leadership role for us, whether that's part-time during a normal working day or that stipend work, we have made major progress in this area. It is important for us now. We're at about 946 full-time FTE, full-time equivalent staff members who are playing these major roles of chief information officer, EdTech leader. We have network admins, lead techs, technical support. We have digital learning coaches in this mix, and so this is a great storyline. This, for the first time ever, we also are looking at library media specialists and where that plays in, and we also take a closer look this year at how STLP is playing a role for us. And so we have an increase of digital learning coaches, a major increase. We have lost a few technical support specialists across the state. Our technicians were down about 7. However, our part-time technical roles have increased. We're down in STLP student help desk by 2. And our guess here is that it's hard to implement a student help desk in a remote or a hybrid scenario, and so folks are working through that. Our CIO contract days are up, and we also, for the first time, we have an increase in our district level data quality role. So I know Dee Connor's super happy about that.
Yeah, that's good news to hear. That's we've spent quite a bit of time on how do we get to data quality. Mm-hmm. And one of the links that we didn't have that we knew that kept us from getting there is that there wasn't really one assigned to the district as the air traffic controller with that as one of their top priorities. And you don't get that. You don't get data quality in any organization until you have someone that is kind of one of their things. Just not every individual data system doing their thing, but someone is really pushing for that, the importance of that, and also the data stewards. We have 90 districts that are much like the Department for Data Governance. This can be a very boring thing to say, but I recognize that most of my states talk about the importance of data governance, because data governance helps you get to high quality data, which folks definitely want to see the importance of. I know the digital learning coaches, we had nearly a tripling of what we've had before. That's not to be, it's not surprising, either full time or part time. That's we anticipate that to be for, like, say, 1 or 2 years. I anticipate even the next school year being impacted by this, given how long it'll take for the vaccine to get through. And
David, our number of part-time or stipend digital learning coaches is increased massively. I mean, it's a huge increase of districts recognizing, and of course our stipend match program that we've implemented this year, which is a huge high five across the state to district leaders, is helping in that conversation as well.
In the way that values the technical staff, I know some technical folks are being put in that role of, saying, how do I use, Google Meet or Teams or Zoom, and so that obviously the digital learning coaches can help out with that. And when do I broadcast the whole time or part of the time? So it actually helps you focus in on the technical staff, the ones that more focus on the daily operations, on those daily operations, and so that has helped. And there are districts that never had them before. So go ahead, Marty.
Well, I was going to, you mentioned this earlier, and I was going to go ahead and bring this up. And again, huge high fives and shout outs to our district leaders who are helping us with this heartbeat conversation. This effort here on our team was led by Courtney DeRossett, Bruce Lindsay, Jody Rose, and Chuck, obviously trying to capture just this heartbeat information as we move forward to help others understand the progress that we're making throughout the year. And so when we think about devices and internet access away from school campus, how we're continuing to make progress with the funding that's been an opportunity for us, a new opportunity for us. So that becoes important to us. As you mentioned this, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the team.
Yeah, keep that up here for just a little bit, because this is something that I got to tell you, folks at all level interested in, and I know you at the local level, especially as we get into an environment we have flu, cold, and COVID going on. It's getting colder. This is going to play more and more importance of what we have out there. So the devices, my understanding is from any devices that are out there. It can be in the home or school provided that are out there. So that's why you're seeing us very interested in the shipments that you got in after 30 September, and those you're still expecting. Try to get somewhat of an estimate of that, so we can let folks know that here's what's not been counted at that 30 December snapshot. Which the snapshots are good, except during times like a pandemic, to where certain data elements got to be kept much more up to date. I guess the parts that Marty, there's a variety of things that are addressing this. We know we're kind of hitting into some of the last mile stuff for the student beyond the school campus. If you can just keep that chart up there. I know it keeps on bouncing back and forth for some reason. Just keep that one there if you could. There have been other kind of points of emphasis, like I think in Covington, to where you see the private industry along with the city government came along with the solution so it wasn't just the $212 million in CARES funds that addressed it. It's things that are also that local communities are doing to address it as well, which will constantly be changing. It's not going to be a snapshot that stays. It's going to be constantly be changing. The part that did, I talked with their staff that did surprise me to see, if I take a look at the internet access beyond the school campus, was in our northern Kentucky and northeastern Kentucky area. And I just be honest with you, I would have expected that to be two of the best areas versus at the 7% level. And it's good to see that down in Region 6, which is normally equated with not having internet access beyond the school campus, is that number is what it is. Obviously, we would like all these numbers to be at 0%. But the difference here, and this is the teaching point, this is an important one I gotta make for folks, is do you have, I always equate it, do you have enough internet to do schoolwork? And enough internet to do schoolwork is not broadband. Broadband is frequently equated with 25 meg download and 3 meg upload. And just so you all know this, is we just need 25% of 1 meg. 1 meg, 25% of that in our school buildings. That's what we use right now across our state. And then taking a look at the applications that we use from the home, like this is not 100%. You may have, these 1% exceptions, but probably the most that's needed is 1 meg, for a student. And most of that's probably just the virtual tool itself, whether it be Teams or Google Meet or Zoom. Most of the applications, even if you take a YouTube, unless you're trying to look at the super high def quality of it, you can do it with less than 1 meg. And so when you see stats, and a lot of the folks do say, well, here's what the broadband access of homes in Kentucky, which people constantly do, broadband does not equate what you need to do for schoolwork. In fact, it's usually 25 times more than what's needed. Now, you have other members in the household that want to do some things work related, but also entertainment related. If you take a look at Netflix, take a look at a high def, that is 5 meg. Standard def, I think, is 3. And so if you have 1 or 2 people doing something like that in the house, obviously it's going to eat it up. And then gaming, I know for the game Fortnite, I think that what I saw, for those that you play Fortnite, I think it says a minimum of 5. Some may be able to be without that, but they'd like to have 20, 25. And so definitely the gaming requires much more than that. But for school-related types of activities, it's pretty frugal. It's what's needed for, and most of the school applications that have been designed by folks have been very conscious of making stuff frugal, so it didn't take up a lot of bandwidth. And so we see that in our schools by using 25% of 1 meg to do this. So what we take a look, do they have enough to do their schoolwork? Not enough to do entertainment types of things, but do they have enough out there to do their schoolwork? And I was talking with the field staff of regions 4 and 7 just to talk about what's going on in those areas, and Charlotte was mentioning some of the current ones that are getting ready. There's a couple of those districts that are getting ready to have some things happen. I know in Covington, for example, that's getting ready to come together, I think, in the December timeframe. And a few of the other counties that cause that number to go up or have initiatives there to try to address that. But those are the ones that surprised me. So there was some good surprises there. The other parts that stood out to me as I was taking a look at it is the learning management systems. I think we have 165 districts that have learning management systems out there, and we saw the breakout of that. Google Classroom is the one we have the most of, followed by Edgenuity, Campus Learning, Schoology, and Canvas. But definitely that was the most. We took a look at what's the most common virtual meeting tool out there. So we had 140 districts that use Google Meet, about 70 that use Teams, and about 60 that use Zoom, which was interesting to me. Student help desk, we have 87 districts that have a student help desk that is out there, which is I think an really important part of the toolbox. The other thing I saw, the individual learning plan, is even though the funding got stopped for that because of all the budget cuts that we've had for quite some time, districts have found a way to continue on with that. And I hope it turns into what the individual learning plan was intended to do. And that really led to the stopping of the funding for it. It was mainly an event that was done one day a year, mainly to meet the requirements of a law, versus an individual learning plan should be used year round. And so it was just a compliance thing. And you could see where all districts were just getting on it once a year and never going to the tool again, besides that one deed to meet the requirements of the law. So I do hope it does move from a compliance that districts see the advantage of using individual learning plan, but that continued on in a variety of forms, including districts building something themselves, simple just to do it electronically. But that kept on going forward.
David, those are all components of what we can when we think about hybrid, blended, virtual, digital learning. These are all components that when we look across the space, in order for students to have the absolute best learning experience possible, whether that's all at 100% in person or in a hybrid scenario where we're in school a couple of days a week and we're in an A/B schedule, something like that. These are all components that are smart, they make sense, and across the state we've been just moving like gangbusters across, to develop strategies. Like you mentioned, the learning management system alone, we have that as a major strategy for NTI as we move forward, or continuation of learning. And so the fact that we are is great to see as that, because that data, if we look across the last 5 years, we've made major progress, which is exciting for us.
Yeah, the last time I would talk about it is the digital driver's license. We have 166 of our 171 districts, and to be honest with you, we're going to circle back to the 5 districts that don't have that are not addressing that, which is super important during this time to be a great digital citizen by both your staff and by your students. And that needs, when someone talks about something happening, I say, well, that's a behavioral issue. That's not a technology issue. And I remind them we have a way, through the digital driver's license and digital citizenship, of a proper behavior. And try not to use as I've always said for decades now, try not to use technology to solve a behavior problem. Use people to solve a behavior problem, and that's one of the best ways to address it. The other thing that we'll be rounding this out with, where we'll be populating. Obviously, we have a tool here, but we'll be populating the district by district look at that, which you're familiar with. We'll send you that link. I know our OET staff, is in the process now of populating what every district has on the tool that we have available on there for digital readiness, and so you can do your comparison to other districts around you and the statewide averages. But we'll also be for our infographic that we provide, I think in the early December timeframe, right before legislative session. It brings in the Bright Bites data and the Speak Up data. And for districts using Bright Bites and Speak Up, they go far beyond what we're collecting here, because they're using it for strategic decisions internally, far beyond what we have here. But that's always interesting information for us to see, and for you to see how you compare to other states. So those districts that are participating in Speak Up and Bright Bites, you get a good feel for your comparison, how you're doing, that you can use with your superintendent, your board, and all your C-level groups within your organization.
David, we target on with Bright Bites and Speak Up those two different cohorts. They're different tools, but get at the same strategy as you mentioned, to go far beyond just counting stuff and to how our students feel about using the stuff and teachers. So we target 15 to 20 districts as a reminder, in each with Bright Bites, and then also 15 to 20 districts we are targeting with Speak Up. Those windows are opening very soon. We want to have those collected before Thanksgiving break. If you're interested in that, or you want to know a little bit more, or you need some follow-up information, Ben Maynard is on point for us to lead that work. And so you probably already have some emails from him, but please reach out to Ben Maynard if you need support with that.
And once again, thanks for everyone participating. And it helps. Hopefully, it helps you all internally. It helps you with comparison. Definitely helps us at the state level. And as we fine tune it, we'll be sharing that information with you. Mike, we're on to another topic with our the status of our current RFPs and the recent awards, and particularly what we're going to do in the area of the computer workstation award for enterprise laptops and desktops, and the vendors that are on there and the vendors that are not. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of cover everything related to kind of active contract RFP type work briefly here. So just for an awareness, upcoming activity we have around contracts and RFP type things would include our networking products and services. That contract's coming to an end. We know that. So people will see some activity from us on how we will handle that going forward to ensure that we have ongoing contracts eligible for networking products and services. And another one that seems like it's a way off, and I know a lot of people don't pay attention to the details of this necessarily, but is our KIH3 contract, which is how we have our internet services available to all school districts. We will become pretty active in our, what I refer to as our next generation Kentucky Education Network, next generation internet, K-12 internet. And again, so, districts may hear us talk about that a little more and so forth. It's a little ways off. It'll sneak up on us quickly, and it has pretty big E-rate implications as far as the timing of that. Some open RFP activity includes the school community nutrition point of sale system. That's an open RFP activity where they're establishing a point of sale solution. We're working with our other office on that here at the department. So some districts may be aware of that, should pay attention to what's going on there. Education licensure system, not necessarily a school activity, school operations type thing, but certainly something that all of our educators are probably interested in, that we've got a good system in place where we handle education licensure and all of the associated applications that are related to that. There's a host of applications that are related to that. So that's an open RFP activity. Of course, we have our last mile internet RFP that's still open for contracts to be added to that, and those are optional to be used. Obviously, districts can choose to do other things for how they assist with last mile internet connectivity. And then we have infrastructure as a service. We have an open RFP activity with to secure an infrastructure as a service solution, contractual solution that we can use as needed and as appropriate. So that's an open one.
Mike, if I could add something about the, I do want to give a high five to one of our technology vendors out there that responded to the last mile internet RFP, and that's Appalachia Wireless. If I could give a standing ovation and clapping, I appreciate what Appalachia Wireless did with that. They met the intent of trying to get it down as close as possible to $10, as close as possible to unlimited internet out there, and the device at no cost. We've had other people that responded that are on the contract, but Appalachia Wireless, and I don't usually highlight them, but really, really met the intent. And so for the districts that use Appalachia Wireless, I hope you take a look at what they are providing in the short and then in the long term, because this is a vendor that really came to the table and tried to be a partner and help our schools and help our students away from the school campus with internet access. And so while there was other providers that put the last mile wired and wireless, Appalachia Wireless is clearly the distant champion and what they provided. So Mike, I know what I'd like for you and your team to put together for us is the results of both, of that contract and other things that aren't on the contract that we've had a couple of the wireless providers that did not respond at all to that bid, but my understanding is that their pricing is available nationally. Now, it's nowhere near what Appalachia Wireless just did, but I'd like to put that in a single place to where the districts can go to. Here's the contracts and costs that are available in a really simple form on the new last mile contract and the contracts we've just had, and people can be added to that up till December, as I can recall. But the ones that haven't yet, take the ones, especially the wireless providers that haven't responded at all, at least with their national pricing and conditions, which is, once again, like I say, nowhere near what Appalachia Wireless just did, but just so folks are aware of these other providers beyond Appalachia Wireless. I think T-Mobile's on there, but that's their national pricing. I don't think we have Verizon and AT&T on there yet.
So we obviously share out the contracts that have been awarded. That information is available on our website as well. But we can certainly look at trying to add other providers that are out there that did not receive a contract via this mechanism, but we know are available to provide these type of services. So we'll just have to take a look at that and review how we would ensure that we do that adequately and don't leave people out or to provide misguiding information. So that's a little bit of a struggle with doing that kind of thing, but we can certainly look at that. So we'll follow up on that, look at that.
I'd say take a look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's done something similar to where they're aware of their state contracts, but the things like the AT&T and Verizon contract, which it's a pricing they have nationally, is they just make sure districts are aware of that. It's not anything unique to their state. It's just their national pricing, which I suspect the two things that we would show there.
Okay, so the recently closed RFPs that resulted in contracts was our server and storage contract. We've shared that information previously. Those contracts were awarded to HP, Lenovo, Cisco, and Dell. So those again, that should not be new information. And then more recently was our instructional device contracts that were awarded. And we want to spend a little time on this one because of some awareness that just needs to be made of how this played out. So the contracts were awarded to Dell, HP, Lenovo, and Microsoft. And as we've mentioned and we've shared out, there was there was two contract Speed and Apple that were previous contract holders, therefore previous product standards that were not awarded new contracts. And so will no longer be considered a product standard. And so with the Apple specifically, and we do have some additional conversations that are occurring and so forth to ensure that districts have an opportunity to address how do they deal with the fact that Apple no longer holds a CATS contract and therefore is no longer considered a product standard for the enterprise level instructional devices. And I want to say, and David, I haven't even had a chance to talk to you about this. I know there was a conversation that occurred with Apple presented some information. Apple has been sharing with districts some ideas of, I don't know the details of this, of some kind of agreements or so forth for the consumer level devices. I haven't had a chance to look at that yet. So for you districts who have been presented with those requests, look for further guidance on that because I don't really know the details of that at all about what is being presented there. And I want to understand that so that we can for sure provide guidance to districts regarding the ongoing purchases of consumer level devices. As everybody hopefully is aware, consumer level devices are not required to be purchased through a CATS contract. They are not considered. We do not have established product standards for consumer level devices. However, we do have guidelines out that do speak to the consumer versus enterprise level devices. That is something that we are reviewing simply because we've gotten a lot of questions about consumer versus enterprise level devices. Some of that sparked by the recent award of contracts. Some of that just, just where people have had other reasons that they have become inquisitive about the difference, how we view consumer versus enterprise level devices. With that said, for the Apple situation that we certainly are all facing with them no longer holding a CATS contract, therefore no longer being considered a CATS product standard, we do realize that there's districts that have had plans in place and activities in motion, purchasing Apple devices and so forth. And therefore, we are implementing a waiver option that is for sure applicable for this school year for districts that have plans in motion for purchasing of Apple equipment and so forth. So we are implementing a process to submit a waiver that would allow Apple devices to continue to be purchased. And again, these will be reviewed. There will be conditions associated to this that the KEs will share directly with any district that wants to pursue this. Our commitment right now is to for sure allow a transition time or a time to make adjustments, whatever you want to refer to it as, under the conditions of a waiver. We will certainly look at how that plays out going forward past this school year. We know that there's discussion about like the MacBook Air as far as is that a consumer or an enterprise device. That's part of what we will make sure we look at, and we'll have a conversation with Apple, we'll have a conversation with some others about, again, our guidelines on consumer versus enterprise level devices. But for the immediate near term, again, we're implementing a waiver process to allow districts to have an opportunity to continue with existing plans for this school year, to make any kind of adjustments, any kind of a transition plan, whatever they may want to refer to that as, for going forward past this school year. And again, there's going to be much more detail from us and guidance on how to look at that. Now, David, I don't know obviously we can speak to the extent of how did Apple not receive a new contract. There are conditions by which a proposal has to meet certain conditions in order to be considered to award a new contract. And pretty specifically, Apple chose to respond to really 12 out of 19 mandatory requirements to be considered to receive a Commonwealth contract, and these are Finance and Administration Cabinet requirements. That very quickly and swiftly made them be ineligible to not receive a new contract. And that's there was conversations that occurred, regarding that, but that was the choice that was made. And I really, we find that unfortunate, and it's unfortunate that we weren't able to try to get that addressed. But that's essentially what happened, is that there were 12 out of 19 mandatory requirements that Apple chose to say that they would not be in agreement with as part of their initial response to that RFP.
So, Mike, I'd like for you to bring up those 19. These are the things with any kind of, what we call CATS contract or state contract. I call them as basic, and I'm going to use a sports analogy, horse racing one. In order to run in the Kentucky Derby every year, you got to agree to some really basic things before your horse is permitted to leave the paddock and walk to the starting gate. And be in one of those slots, those 18, 19 slots for the starting gate. If you don't agree to those, then you don't get your horse even placed in the starting gate. Therefore, you don't even run in the race. And it's simple things. These are not really difficult things. It's kind of like you got to agree to put a saddle on the horse. You got to agree for a jockey to be on the horse. You got to agree the jockey wears a helmet. You got to agree that you're running a horse. These are really basic things. And in the Apple situation, these are things they've agreed to for the most part since 1993. As all the other vendors we have that have CATS contracts, it's not the computers. all the CATS contracts we have and all the state government contracts we have. It just takes one no. And Apple placed down 12 no's in these categories, these 19 categories. Which, like I said, I don't, to my knowledge, I've never been aware of any vendor that has put as many no's down there, knowing it just takes one, as what just happened here. We're not happy about it. So we immediately try to see what is the impact of it, what are some ways we can mitigate it. And that's why, we looked at the readiness data that I just talked about to say, okay, if we really take a look at what districts have purchased that are either Mac OS desktops or Mac OS laptops, they've really used their own funds to purchase. It's about 1% of all the computers that we have out there. And out of that 1%, how many of those are Mac Airs that could be used? And I think it's going to be at least half of that, if not more than that, most of the younger students. I know there's going to be these exceptions that we may be down to 4,000 out of the 900,000, could be 950,000 computers that we have out there. That are the desktops or the probably more so the MacBook Pros. So we're taking a look at, can the folks that are using the MacBook Pros use the MacBook Airs? Are there a way that, much like we have with Office 365, you can access that service in the cloud from a variety of different manufacturers? You don't even have to have a Windows device to do it. The software that folks are using, is that software up in the cloud, and they could use a variety of other types of devices besides a MacBook Pro laptop to access that. And I know there's some rare circumstances where they're using they bought a Mac OS desktop. It wasn't given to them. They bought it. So it's not what we hoped. I'm be honest with you, and I told Apple this, extremely disappointed in their bid response and their effort. But that, as we use a horse racing analogy, that race has run. Their horse did not get in the starting gate because they didn't agree to the really basic terms and conditions that you see here, the 19. And so not only did they not win, they didn't even run the race. But we do have 4 winners in the winner circle. And so we'll move forward with those. And we're trying to find a way to mitigate, at least for this school year, what just happened with the Apple contract, because we did not anticipate that coming. But it's happened. So we're gonna, we're doing our best to move forward with it. Given it really was a choice that Apple made. It was not something to Apple. It's the choice that Apple made, and I equate it to 12 air balls is what I call them. To put a no in here and to do it 12 times is an air ball. So you don't get a chance to be competitive in a game. You shoot 12 air balls as a player.
So, David, just to provide a little more clarification on a couple of points I seen pop up in the chat there. So somebody made a contact about byte speed, and I think that byte speed would likely peak. Are y'all still hearing me okay? Because
yes,
I'm hearing
I am. Yeah, I'm here. I'm hearing you. No, I'm not hearing you.
I think I'm back.
Yeah, you are. You're back.
I had some kind of going on, and I'm in the office, so But anyway, clarifying byte speed, I think would probably advise folks that they had issues with submitting their response as far as it being submitted, and just basically presented it. And so I think they publicly have kind of shared that with some folks. And I know a comment came up that kind of spoke to that a little bit. So that's what happened there. We think we never seen a response from byte speed. But on the Apple side, again, I know there was a comment about iPads. A clear distinction right now that we would identify with consumer versus enterprise is a iOS device versus a Mac OS device. However, we do realize that there are likely some bleed over, that it's not necessarily that clear of a distinction between consumer and enterprise. And it's the same thing on the Windows side as well. There are definitely devices that there's a gray area of whether it should be considered a consumer versus an enterprise device. And so we certainly want to provide some better guidance, clarification on that, so that we can avoid, just people not being sure or confident about how they need to look at that whole topic area.
Hey, Mike, if I
Yeah.
can, I would love to, with what you just said, because you said that perfectly. I want to connect that to a comment that was made in Soapbox. We have a duty, and you're leading the effort within our office and statewide to make sure that we identify what the contract was targeting, enterprise devices, right? Which we've articulated very well and said multiple times. No one is, and I'm connecting it to a comment that was made in Soapbox. No one is trying to find a loophole for anything. We have a duty to identify what the contracts are for and not for. I don't know if you want to say anything else about that.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think it's a good point, Marty. I mean, I think folks need to, and the situation that has we've been presented with provided a little more attention to it, and that's and so our responsibility is to respond and react to that accordingly, and that's what we're doing.
I think besides that, sorry to interrupt there, is Mike mentioned the upcoming bids that we have. All the bidders have to agree to those 19 things to have their horse move from the paddock to the starting gate to even run a race. And all the existing KETS contracts we have in place, the owners and the companies have agreed to all 19 of those. So all the contract that we have awarded way beyond the workstation ones they agreed to, and all the ones pretty much in all of Kentucky state government have to agree some of those really basic terms and conditions. So, we'll move forward without it as a product standard. That's why we're looking for ways to transition. People use certain software. How can they use it on a different platform going forward? And that would be our intention, as Mike said, is the waivers. We'll have to find some way to finish this school year, but part of those waivers we'll be discussing, the future. How do you move off of that and do that a different way? Not immediately, but in the longer term, you will probably see those kind of discussions, because this is not going to be a long-term thing. It is a decision that was made for us by a company that didn't respond in the way they needed to. So we'll be transitioning. Mike, anything else with the contracts before you go on to the last mile update?
No, I don't think so. We can transition and speak to the last mile internet connection to our eligible K through 12 students. Specifically, I'm going to hit on, and Amy, you pulled up the last slide, so I'm hoping you're prepared to pull up this slide as well. If not, I will. But I'm assuming you probably will, since you pulled the other one up quicker than I could get to it. Yeah, there we go. Thanks. So I'm going to specifically speak to the $8 million funding program, and then obviously, David, we can talk more about just overall the fact that there are additional dollars that are certainly available to go toward assisting and providing last mile internet connectivity to students. So if you look at the chart that's up here, and I'm just going to real kind of briefly hit on the high points of it. We've had allocations approved for 66 districts, and the total dollar amount associated to those approved plans and those approved allocation of dollars is $3.5 million. And we've got a note in there, 18 of those have they had some kind of a reduced amount of their portion that they were eligible for that they chose to act on. And then we have our potential approved funds, and these are districts who have plans submitted, but yet they've not been approved yet. And then it also talks about the I'm not going to get hung up on the second point there, because that has to do with the 18 that had reduced amount. But bottom line, in the potential approved funds is $2.6 million, and those are plans that have been submitted but not yet approved. So we're looking at about $6 million there that is in either approved or potentially approved. And then we have right now funds that are potentially released or anticipated to be released. And this is based on either districts that have very clearly identified they will not participate, or districts that we have reached out to. Our KEs have been reaching out to districts that we haven't seen any kind of an activity in the GMAP program, which is the program by which you access to submit your funding plan, your spending plan for these funds. to get an idea of whether they think they're going to do something by the end of the month or not. And keep in mind, we did extend until the end of October, October 30th. That's a Friday, I believe. I believe that's why we said October 30th. That's a Friday. To submit a plan, because we realized the previous date was just a little too quick of a turnaround time, and we had some struggling going on, and we also had made some clarifications about what you could do and couldn't do and so forth. So anyway, we extended that date to October 30th to submit a plan. And so we've reached out and tried to get an idea from every district about whether they plan to submit something or not. And essentially in these two categories, we have potentially released funds of $748,000, and then anticipated release funds, which is a little more certain, of $1 million. So our range of funds that are going to be used and not used has a pretty wide range and uncertainty yet. And keep in mind, that's part of the complexity that we have to manage with this. We have until October 30th for districts to submit a plan. So kind of regardless of whether they tell us they are or are not going to, a district could submit a plan until October 30th. Hopefully districts will tell us if they changed their mind when they give us an idea that they maybe weren't going to and then they decided to, or vice versa. And then they have until December 30th to spend the dollars. And then they have till the 1st of February to seek their reimbursements, if you will. So those are all complexities of us managing this pool of money. And the reason I point that out is that, we made a statement early on in this program that we would try to redistribute funds to districts that could use more than what they were originally made available, what was originally made available to them. And we're still looking at that. We have not ruled that out, but we do realize there's some complexity in how we could do that, because we have a certain amount of uncertainty about what dollar amounts are going to be spent or not. And I want to say with that, so we're still looking at that, and our goal would be before the end of this month, we can clearly advise districts on whether there will be any opportunity for us to redistribute any unused funds to other districts that could use those funds, that have got programs in place that they've been doing and are doing to where they could use more than their original allocation of dollars, the money made available to them. But I think also very importantly, and David, I'm going to let you speak to this part a little more specifically, is that our intention is to use those unused funds, and we certainly have to go through some hoops, if you will, about what our options are, we can do and can't do, is to use those funds for other things, the unused funds of the $8 million, on some other things that would be beneficial to all districts, and specifically in helping us address the budget cut and so forth. So that our intention is to maximize these dollars one way or another within the constraints and the parameters by which we're able to do so. So, David, I'm going to let you speak to that. Okay. And we can circle back to the bigger pot of money as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about in totality, districts have had, $212 million that they could use to address this. The last mile, I call it beyond the school campus, and even on the school campus for $204 million of that to beef up what you need to do in the school building for in-person instruction, and even the parking lot area for that could be used for it as well. I can tell you the intention of the $8 million was mainly beyond the school campus. It was try to get as close as possible to the student beyond the school campus. We were very open and still are open to being used in the parking lot and there's specific situations that there is nothing closer to the home than the school campus, but it was never intended to be that was the sole solution, was the parking lot of the school building. That was as close as you ever attempted to try to reach the remaining students that you had. It could be part of the toolbox, but it couldn't be, well, that's the solution we have for all the students beyond the school campus. So we were always open to, allowing that, and even allowing you to make provisions for the previous costs that you've spent since March 1st, but you had to show that you had done some things to try to reach all the students that were remaining. We talk about statewide average is about 3%. There's about 15 or 20 districts that are way more than 3%. Now there's probably 5 of those. Looks like they're doing something to quickly deal with it, but there's about 15, and they're spread throughout all the state, almost equally. You don't see it in a certain section that are far behind, and even counties touching them are far ahead, which I'm trying to understand how a county, can be so far behind with every county touching it and every county touching those being, far, far better. But this would be a way to try to address that, and it wasn't just a have them come to the parking lot, which once again, for a small percentage of students, that may be the only way they get it, and there's nothing that comes closer to the home to get in place. But there was a variety of money, like I say, the $212 million that could do this. The big limitation, and we knew this immediately, the $8 million was its December 30th cutoff. And even on the day that this was announced, that I announced it to you all, I talked about that the money can't be used to pay for costs beyond December 30th. I knew immediately when we found that out a few days before it was announced that it really inhibited. I have no doubt that all $8 million would be spent if the money could be spent on costs beyond December 30th. But much like most things, it doesn't matter till it matters. And folks taking a closer look at what it can and can't be spent on and realizing it really can't pay for costs beyond December 30th. Obviously, the other CARES money can be. The $204 million of CARES money can be spent on that up to September of 2022. But I understand that there's a portion of those that may already been allocated. It's tough for you to get a portion of that to do this service. So as we take a look at the money that's left over, as Mike talked about it, I know we've asked for what districts could really move on it quickly and understanding all the limitations. It has a 30th December cutoff. It can't, not one dime can be spent on it beyond the December 30th. Do we offer that to other districts that can fully take advantage of that with all the conditions I just said? It's not just to put in parking lots, to beef up your school parking lot, but it's really trying to reach, to the home as close as they can get it. And could we really turn around that quickly with all the bureaucracy that has to happen with, getting identified, getting it approved by everyone within the district, and then actually spent within there? So that's still on the table, and there may be 5 districts that we recognize that can, still take advantage of, still want to, and with all those conditions on it. As Mike mentioned, the other thing is and at the end of the day is, we've already made the state budget office aware of what we see. This looks like it's have a high probability of being spent and what's not being spent. One of the things that I identified, Mike will talk about here, I hope you do after this is done, we get finished with this, is what we anticipate the KETS offers being. If you take a look at the summary notes that I sent to you, we anticipated, because of the 8% budget cut, the KETS offers this year being reduced from $21 to $17. So I'm going to try to, I'm trying to find a way to minimize that, to maybe make it, instead of 21 to 17, 21 to 19, by utilizing and understanding we have to take a cut, is utilizing a portion of it to pay the costs of, for example, services that we know districts have been broadcasting out from their classrooms to homes, since July, August, especially September and October, to get credit for doing that, which reduces, the budget cut from, 21 to 17 to 21 to 19. Now, the folks that we're making aware of this may say, no, we want it all back. We have something totally not related to K-12 we can use it for, that we want to use it for. It was just meant to get, and provide services as close to the home as possible. So that's the unknown parts of it. But we want to give you an update on where we're currently at with spending it, and with the limitations of it. This always had limitations of it. And these are really unique times, as most of you know. In the past, districts getting involved with paying for internet service for the home is something I, strongly discourage. And we discouraged it since 1993 of districts getting into that business because it's really difficult to disengage that, especially if you start doing it. And it's difficult to pay for that. But, we've never had a pandemic like this since, in my time, in the close to 30 years, and obviously it's been 100 years since we've had a pandemic like this. So we recognize this school year and perhaps the following school year is going to be like none other in our lifetime. And so this is an exception period to try to reach those students as close as to their home as possible beyond the school campus. So we'll keep you informed on our success in doing that. And if it's even possible, let's say we have 5 districts that really could take advantage of it, understanding all those conditions with it, the shot clock that's on it, or if we could not benefit all districts across the state, and get some credit for services that we've been doing that normally don't receive a budget cut, but get financial credit for it. So it reduces the financial impact of the offers of assistance to all 171 districts.
So I think it would be good districts that are do feel like they have a good potential use of additional dollars, justification for that, and so forth, to advise your KE, so we're aware of that. And then, like I said, the KEs have been reaching out to districts that have not submitted a plan yet, or have not yet submitted a plan, to try and get a status of whether they intend to or not. And again, we know that there's some dynamics associated to that. That there's, there could still be some questions over the next week whether a district does or does not. But that deadline to submit that initial plan is October 30th. So we will have a little bit more certainty of where we're at that point. Go ahead and speak to, you mentioned the offers, David. We are going to go ahead and move forward with the first offer at $7.50. We realize that's less than the $9 we projected, and that's because we have unknowns yet about how we're going to deal with the budget cuts. So, but we do want to go ahead and move forward with this first offer. So we're going to move forward with the first offer of $7.50, knowing that we can adjust our second or third offer to be higher than we originally projected them to be, which originally the projection would have been the second offer at $7 and the third offer at $5. So we'll certainly make adjustments, and one of those hopefully will be a higher dollar amount. I feel pretty confident that one of those will be a higher dollar amount, so we can get back up around 19 and maybe even up to 20 or 21. I say that, and David didn't say that, but I will. But 19 is our goal, to get back up to where we don't have a budget reduction more than down to $19 per ADA. But we're certainly going to do all we can to make sure that the offers are what they can be, and that's essentially what I'm wanting to make sure I share. The last thing I want to say real quickly is regarding E-rate. Obviously, E-rate filing will be coming up. It's always something to be paying attention to. There has been a lot of discussions and activity around the E-rate program, so we will keep people advised as things we hear that are being discussed. I don't expect any kind of big revelations of anything to do with E-rate. We do have, I think, a handful, and when I say handful, it may be one hand, not two, of districts that we still don't have their letters of agency, which are essentially required for us to do a statewide RFP on behalf of all school districts and have eligibility for all school districts. So that'll be required as we move forward with our networking products and standards, which will have E-rate eligibility, obviously. If you haven't got that in yet, I know you probably already heard from your CATS engineer about we need to get that in. So I think that's all I have.
How many more of those we need, Mike, that we don't have in yet?
A handful, like I said.
Okay.
I think it's all like one hand, not two hands. So yeah, it's only a few.
And I believe the ways, to circle back, the reimbursement for the $8 million is once we've approved their plan, they can probably start applying for reimbursements, right, for the $8 million?
Yeah.
Yeah. So any costs that have been spent on that. The school report card that went out on Wednesday, I always want to remind folks the school report card has three components of it. And it's mainly focused in on students first, parents, school staff, and then other folks in the county that are closely connected to the district, and then last, media and researchers. And so we find is the folks that are most interested in that call the third part. There's three parts of it. There's the one you see, we have a company called Bright Bites Do. There's a second part called our Infinite Campus Parent and Student Portal, and the third part is Open House, where we mainly point researchers to. The second one, the Infinite Campus part of our student report card, is probably the most valuable to parents and students that are currently within a school system. On the first part is probably most valuable to parents and students they're looking to move or relocate and just trying to find out about a school district is the easiest parts that I put on it. But I always want to remind folks, Infinite Campus, and not take that for granted, the parent and student portal has the real-time information and near real-time versus the school report card, which has annual snapshots of a lot of that data. But in totality, it's can be a pretty powerful thing for parents to see how their school's doing compared to another one, and within a district. And so once again, the target of it is not for the press and researchers as the primary consumers of it. I always remind folks it's for our student, it's for our parents first, it's for school folks to do some comparison with their own district, and then folks closely connected to the district, and then lastly, the press and researchers, which we sometimes get that flip with people, putting them at the top priority when we want them to have access to it, but they're toward the very bottom. Actually, they're at the bottom of that. So I appreciate all those that provide the information within districts, because that covered a wide range. The technology portion is just a really tiny portion, and within that school report card, there's tons of other, probably 95%, 99% is other kind of information related to it. So we appreciate all the parts of your district that contributed to that. Going forward, obviously, it did not have the assessment and accountability data in it, but it had all the other data elements in it that are up to date as possible. The financial piece of it comes out in the April timeframe, and we didn't want to crunch that in just like last year to try to force that in. It made more sense to do that in the April-May timeframe. Last item I have on here is and I do want to circle back to Go Soapbox. And Chuck, just a kind of a heads up, I'll give you a chance to see if we got any feedback and talk about the importance of feedback about the devices and what we're going to go forth with. And then Marty just heads up, we're going to show the poll result questions that we have so far. But Marty, I'll have you first of all talk about STLP. And if Jeff's on here, you want him to speak about as well what we're doing with regionals and perhaps state. We do recognize, much like everyone, the pandemic has so many unknowns. My favorite, 9 days, 10 days of the work year are related to STLP. By far, they're my favorite. Along with some of the other events that we do, at the state level, with districts, those are my favorite. This interaction with the districts, this interaction with you all, those are my favorite days. But we recognize, during the pandemic and the unknowns and most of you have been to STLP events before, of how closely crowded we are in with an event. We don't have the entire building, but we have a good margin, and the students are side by side, and it was just the difficulty with getting spacing, for a regional at a university campus and all that would it would entail to do that. And so, our move is having to adjust both what we're doing regionally and statewide is something we're going to see. My counterpart with career and technical education is faced with the same thing of doing a virtual component. I recognize most folks and organizations that are trying to plan out in a very difficult time pandemic, are faced with the same situation of trying to be safe, but also trying to be smart and try to still keep on doing what you're doing. So Marty, I'll let you share what we're doing with STLP coming up with the regionals.
Thanks, David. And this is a perfect time for us. And I know Jeff is on the line, and we're ready to share how STLP is moving full steam ahead. Jeff, before you go, I want to make sure that we connect STLP to the work that students are engaged in right now. So we always say, and Jeff does a great job of championing the ideas that STLP is not a pulled out separate program. It is what our students are doing. Every student who is creating digital products right now has an opportunity to participate. And so we're excited about that. It is a vehicle for us. And we do know that lots of folks throughout the state are engaged and asking great questions right now. And so we're full steam ahead. Jeff, kind of give us the layout and build that excitement for us, because it's the time is upon us.
Absolutely. Hey, guys, thanks for giving me a couple minutes. I'll be real brief. Bottom line is we have tried to be as respectful as possible of everyone's situation. So we have built our STLP plan for the year around the fact that our teachers are figuring out in-person, hybrid, what's going to happen from day to day. So regionals are happening. We're 100% going to be online for regionals. We've actually pushed that deadline way back into mid-December, trying to hit it before everyone takes time off for winter break, Christmas break. But the goal there will be, it's going to be super simple. If you've done regionals before and how you've thought about projects and project presentations, put that aside, and we are going totally with a simplified elevator pitch approach for regionals. And we'll actually have those be all online. There's no actual defending with judges. So just trying to give that an opportunity to grow a little bit and let them be creative with how they want to present that. And then we'll be looking down the road once we get past level 1 there with December with our elevator pitches to our level 2 projects. And that's where we'll start seeing a little bit more normal back to how we maybe have done it at state before. So again, lots of ways to be creative, lots of ways to be flexible. We've got your teachers and your students in mind. If you haven't jumped into STLP yet, you've been hesitating because you're not sure, think about it this way. One of the benefits is we don't have transportation costs. You don't have to pay for subs this year, and it's all digital. You don't have to so much as buy a 3-sided board to help support STLP with your school. And then we've also pushed back that digital product online judging. Normally it happens. Our deadline for that is right after we come back after New Year's break. And this year we pushed it back till late in February to give people lots more time. Because here's the thing. We know that if you are doing any hybrid, if you're doing virtual, the time that your students have been using all of those Chromebooks that you've purchased, they're making stuff and they're making various digital products to demonstrate what they're learning. DPOJ, it's perfect. You just upload a link to those and now you're participating in STLP. So one of the benefits, I don't want to say benefit, that's tough, but one of the positive upsides, the silver lining here a little bit in this time is maybe this is your chance to jump into STLP using what your students already have. I don't even want to try and wrap my head around state STLP yet. We'll get to that. For now, let's focus on regionals. Let's focus on DPOJ. Know that state will be awesome when the time comes. But if you can, encourage everyone who is interested in doing your STLP this year to reach out, to jump on the STLP website and get the get recognized form to let us know they're out there. It also gives us some feedback so we can focus our attention on areas that our STLP coaches think are priority. So lots going on. We're full steam ahead. If any time, this is probably the one time of all that STLP is really primed and in the spotlight to soar because it lends itself so well to our situation right now. So awesome. Thanks, guys.
And Jeff, I do want to connect. We have as mentioned, we have an extreme growth in districts who have digital learning coaches. And I just want to push in on the fact that our digital learning coaches are working with teachers every day and the opportunity to identify those student products. Again, demonstration of learning all throughout. We have 130 full-time digital learning coaches and just about 340 part-time or stipend digital learning coaches across the state now. And that's a great connector. Again, it's a vehicle to highlight our student work. Especially during a time when many of our students are not having opportunities to be highlighted. And
I'll take it one step further for all of our new digital learning coaches out there, for folks that have taken advantage of some of the funding opportunities for digital learning coaches. What a great way, built-in easy way to prove your worth. Check out this great stuff that our students are doing and are supported by our digital learning coaches, just like we've always been supported. Every time I've gotten a chance to be in front of CIOs at a regional meeting with the KEs, I'm always pointing out STLP is a great vehicle for you. It's ready-made for you to demonstrate for your board why the investment in technology was vital and that you're getting a return on that investment. So I'll say the same thing to digital learning coaches. Here is a great opportunity, ready-made. You don't have to do anything. Just help plug in some of those digital products and what students are doing into this platform, and we'll shine a bright light on it and give the students the attention they deserve for their creativity, give the coaches, the teachers, everyone just use this as an opportunity to blow up the great things that are going on.
I know Laura Raganos, who leads our Digital Learning Coach Network, would be sharing that same celebration point. So David, back to you.
Yeah, if you could bring up Marty, let's just take a look at the Go Soapbox feedback we received. Anything else we need to do before we close out here is let's go through the question responses, and then let's go through I know Chuck Austin wrote and tried to get some discussion questions, whether we got any feedback from that. So let's first go to the poll response questions. Let's see what our results were.
David, so we had 3 poll questions. We have 54 responses, which is a little bit lower than where we normally are.
Yeah. Probably some of it has to do with, I didn't put the Go Soapbox link on my, the agenda, so it's on me.
David, can I just speak up on this
Yes.
particular?
Yes.
This was about the school participation plan. Just so districts know, this is what's going to be used to kind of share with anybody on what is going on as far as if the schools are hybrid, if the schools are not, and what percentage, what days were each. So it's important that this custom tab and Infinite Campus be updated periodically to show whether this school is remote and for what period, whether they're it's hybrid situation or if they're fully in person. It's basically school. So many of you are going to either be, remote or hybrid most of the time. So, but we've got most of the districts updated this. Some of them we're reaching out to because they haven't, but it is something that will need to change as your participation for your schools does change.
Thanks, Dee Dee. Let's go to the next one.
Hope you like, Dee Dee, how I flipped straight to that one.
Yeah, that was great.
And
Man, that was impressive.
Is your district taking advantage of opportunity offered by Infinite Campus for campus learning, OLR, online registration, and
I just want to encourage you not to miss this opportunity, because if you implemented online registration this first year and you just did the basic, there might be a lot of things you've said, I wish we had gotten this, I wish we had gotten this. This is an opportunity for you to work with Infinite Campus to have trainers walk you through how to do that. So it can be for one person in the district, or it can be for a committee or this, or if some of you want to approach it regionally. Infinite Campus said that was, they would work with us in that way too. But this opportunity is short-lived. It goes through about mid-December. So, and the same thing for campus learning. If you need training, whether you're a Google Classroom district and you just need more information on how that works and how the setup is, this is free training available to you. But again, it's something that you need to take the initiative to respond back if you've got a case already created in Infinite Campus, or if you're new to either one of these programs and you want to take advantage of it so you can take advantage of the offering for year 2, then go ahead and sign up to take it in with campus.
Go on to 3, Marty. You just have that queued up. And I know, Dee Dee, I saw in your note ahead of time that our normal summit that we have in March is not going to exist. So Infinite Campus is offering, this kind of thing at no cost. Is this what you were talking about in your note?
No, this is something different. This is to replace the Infinite Campus interchange. It's just normally.
That's what I was talking about, the summit, the interchange. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
It's normally in November, December timeframe. There is a cost associated with $499 per district, but that's unlimited. People can participate. So you can look at the agenda and have people just participate in one session for the whole time. But it is an opportunity to get a lot of training at low cost. And, if you sent one person to interchange, it's probably with travel and everything costs more than this does.
Yeah, I call it the summit, and I got the date mixed up. It's not March, it's November. I was thinking I was winning that, but that's a great event, the interexchange. So this is the give point on that to take advantage of that. So just make your folks aware of that transition, that there's not going to be a interexchange or IC summit, that we'll be doing it this way. So Chuck had some questions that he asked that we're trying to have the field staff work on. And Chuck, I don't know if you want to give him more emphasis or direction that we're our desire to get the heartbeat of the internet access and heartbeat of just a feel for the devices that have already come in September 3rd, after September 30th, are expected to come in.
Yeah. Well, and before I do that, David, because I absolutely want to plug that, man, I got to be a cheerleader for just a second, okay? And I got to send out a huge word of encouragement and pat on the back to our EdTech leaders that are on our webcast today. We all recognize that the digital divide is really and truly, it's a community issue to resolve. And what I mean by that is, I define community as, public sector at the federal, state, and local level, and the private sector, at the national, state, and local level, as well as, our consumers at home. Everyone has a responsibility to resolve or address the digital divide. And I want to continue to emphasize, and David, I know we talk about this a lot internally, that it never has been and it never should be K-12's sole responsibility to resolve a lot of the issues that we continue talking about and we continue working through. But that being said, all this data that we've been collecting and all this data that we've reviewed today, to me, the great story that it continues to point out is that our EdTech leaders and our school district leaders not only are doing their part, but they're going way above and beyond, all right, to just ensure that every child has the access they need to close the gaps as much as they can when it comes to access away from the school campus, as well as ensuring that they've got a device to connect to the learning environment. And, even in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of budget cuts, contract issues we've talked about today, supply chain issues that are impacting delivery, federal funding sources that have some crazy requirements wrapped around them, David, as we talked about, December 30th. I just want to point out to our EdTech leaders, you guys are making such a huge difference. You're making such huge progress. And a lot of the infographics and the data we've shown today continues to support that. So in spite of all the chaos, in spite of virtual fatigue and everything that everybody's walking through right now, you guys are making such a difference in the lives of all these students. So that being said, we've got a heartbeat collection point that we're going to be doing for the next couple of months. And that's really our opportunity as a state to demonstrate that we, as in K-12, are doing our part. All right, we're moving this ball as far as we can move it as public education. And we're going to be tweaking that, for the month of November, because part of what we're also hearing is, as I mentioned, some supply chain issues. And we've got some folks that they've had devices on order for a while. And even though that they're not necessarily part of what I would call our KETS enterprise contract structure, we're going to see what we can do at the state level to help put some pressure on some folks to help resolve some of those issues. So, I just ask that you guys keep up the good work. We know it's hard. We know that people are tired, but you're doing such an awesome job, and we just appreciate your efforts. I just wanted to leave folks with that today, David.
Thank you, Chuck.
Well said.
I think that
Well said.
I think with everyone, it's pretty amazing what all of us are able to do and push through this time. And it's just as I say, with our OET staff, I miss having a team huddle and seeing folks here, and then doing our regionals, which is my favorite thing to go out and do, but we're still pushing through it. I hope it's calmed down some for you. As we were finishing up last school year, we probably didn't get much to prepare for the beginning of the school year with all the unknown. I hope it's calmed down a little bit, and you have the strategies and how you're going to handle back in person or back 100% virtual or a higher percentage of that going forward this next school year. This is not, like I say, it's not to be like anything we've ever gone through. It's a marathon race. It's a couple of marathon races, as I put it at the very beginning. You finish one, and then another one started. We've started another one at the very beginning of it. And I think we've done all the things we can do to prepare as well as we can prepare. Other things, obviously, we can get better at. But I do appreciate, Chuck, thank you for just thanking folks in districts of, I'm sure it looks aggravating. I got all this stuff going on. Why do I got to share anything going on? But there's so many people interested from so many different levels with good intentions. And it is helpful to have that. But I do appreciate our OET staff that are on here today greatly. Appreciate what you all do, and appreciate what our district EdTech leaders are doing. Even though you may not get the pat on the back every day or at all, it is making a huge difference. And the things we do behind the scenes are mostly unknown that we're doing them until they don't work. Thankfully they've worked pretty well and at high levels during this time. Hopefully that continues on for the rest of the school year. Do we have anything that came up in Go Soapbox that need addressed before we close out here? Not just the questions, but percolated to the top that maybe our staff's already been responding to that I need to before we sign off. And
David, I think there was we've responded to pretty much everything. I think Mike gave a response on any update for first offer of assistance, so we talked about that. The only question that I'm not sure we addressed is, do we know a timeline when we'll know the sales and service agents for both Dell and Lenovo who were awarded a contract for enterprise instructional devices? And I'm not sure Mike mentioned that, but that is the only other thing.
I don't know that I have an answer to that question, but we will get an answer to that question about how soon we can expect that they will be able to know those.
Thanks.
That's it, David.
Well, Well, like other our meetings, I'll stay on here, and we'll officially close it out here in a second. But I'll stay on here for another 15, 20 minutes for those that just want to talk just about anything what's maybe going on with you personally or just within your district. I would like to. The part I really do also miss is going to a different district and highlighting them. I greatly miss that to interact just not with you, but all the parts of your leadership that you have in your district. I'm trying to think, how can I incorporate that into something we're doing with this? I noticed, our new commissioner, Dr. Jason Glass, what he's doing is he has 3 or 4 superintendents kind of give an update what's going on in their district, which I think is helpful to all the other superintendents. So that's the part I'm mulling around is how can we get, while we can't go to a district and highlight them like we used to for the foreseeable future, how can we still highlight the good deeds of a district and also allow, the cool thing about doing that is other districts could just not learn from that district, but they could interact with them as well as we could and get to know them a little bit better. So that's the step I'm looking to try to do for future ones. Since we can't be at a district site, how do I have more of a district feel for it and highlight them a little bit similar to what our commissioner is doing, which I like. I learn a little bit about 4 districts every time he's done 2 of those. I've learned about 8 that I didn't kind of know. And they always are mentioning technology in there, what they have and how they're utilizing it. So it definitely comes into play. Well, thanks for those that joined us today. I can say as after I sign off here and we had the official closer with those watching YouTube, I'll hang on here. So once again, thanks for all what you do for our students and our teachers and our school leaders across the state. See you next month.